excited to meet you. I feel like your book just fell from the universe straight into my lap.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, it was kind of left there, and I have to say I really resonate with everything that I've read so far. I'm curious, what does a day in your life look like?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it usually starts with either meditation or a dog walk. So meditation and a dog walk, or meditation during a dog walk, I think that's probably the best way to put it. We have 2 Bali dogs called Ati and Muda, beautiful creatures. We rescued them 2.5 years ago. So I don't switch my phone on, I don't do any technology, anything like that until such time as we've been for an hour-long walk and I'm home or I'm in a coffee shop. And traditionally I'll go to a coffee shop called BGS, which is Dreamland, not too far from where you're staying, I think. You'll have gone past it. Great coffee, great milk. They have a homemade almond milk. Big up BGS. I'll go there and have a decaf or a hot chocolate and just chat to whoever's there. So actually it's quite a relaxed morning, deliberately so. And then I get to my desk around 9, 10 o'clock and I start to write.
So you're writing another book?
I'm writing. I've got outlines for 3 new books.
Wow.
So I just can't decide which one to really. I've written outlines in a couple of chapters for 2. Well, actually, start again. I've written the outline and 2 chapters for 1, which is another self-help book. It's called Never Meditate in a Balinese Barbershop. And there's a story behind that. I actually just went to the barber yesterday, to the one barber with whom I can meditate. Long story.
I'm curious, do tell.
Well, I mean, we are doing a podcast, so maybe I should just tell you about it.
Go for it.
So, Never Meditate in the Balinese Barbershop is a guide to meditation for people who can't meditate. Or people who find it difficult to meditate. Because so many people have reached out to me since I published How to Die Happy, and since I started to do the podcast as well, saying the same thing. You know, I love your vibe. What do you do? How do you do it? And obviously one of the things I always discuss is meditation, to which many people say, I can't do it. I can't meditate. And I used to find that amusing, but then I realized I couldn't do it when I first started. I also realized I was being very judgmental. But then I realized I was being hard on myself by judging myself for judging, so I stopped that as well. But I decided there was a space for a meditation book that was written in my style, using my voice, which is quite, what is it? I suppose it's upbeat, it's deep, but it's also fun.
I feel like your whole approach is, I love the term cherry picking, because I really resonate with that. You don't have to do one practice and, stick to it blindly for the rest of your life. So maybe that's also what people resonate with. Yeah,
it could be. It could be that. Yeah, I suppose if you said to somebody, right, you've got to stick to this one practice for the next 20 years to get anywhere near enlightenment, it's quite a scary idea for some. Whereas, I absolutely recommend that people. We're really lucky, aren't we? Because we have so many modalities and choices to be on our wellness journey, to heal and to stay healed. And that's one of the things I love about Earth School, I suppose, and all of these practices, that one person's trash is another person's treasure. So and in meditation, of course, there are many, many, many forms of meditation as well, and different ways to meditate. So I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of making sure that people realize there are myriad choices.
How did you learn to meditate then?
It's a good question. I actually think my first foray into it was with the app Headspace.
Yes, love Headspace.
Right? Yeah, which is, I think, a foray for many people. And then I started to understand the concept of frequency and how we are all on a subatomic level frequency. So then I dove into isochronics and binaurals, where I understood then that soundscape design actually could play an incredible part in our meditation journey without needing to listen to somebody else's voice, without the guide. So I started to just listen to soundscapes, 432 hertz for third eye, 528 for heart center, so on and so forth. And I found that to be incredibly helpful. And then eventually I wonder if many people do this, sort of start with the voice, then the music, and then eventually, okay, I'm ready to meditate with nothing. And I started to do that. And then in 2019, which was kind of my first year of this journey, a lot of which is captured in the book, I went on a silent retreat, which was a week-long retreat with
Vipassana.
Yeah, well, it's kind of Vipassana.
Okay.
I write about it in the book, actually. My teacher is a chap called Ada.
Okay.
A very compassionate, beautiful Balinese Buddhist teacher.
You did that here in Bali? Okay.
Yeah, so he has a foundation called the Bali Usada Foundation. And he managed to heal his own cancer.
Wow.
Using meditation. And he has an incredible gift, and he's been honing the gift ever since he was a young man. He can scan you quietly in just a few minutes and find ailments.
Reminds me a little bit of Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, there's a connection
Yeah.
with what he does and what Joe Dispenza is talking about. I suppose Joe Dispenza is talking about the science of what Bhakti does. So I've done a couple of silent meditation retreats with him now, and that is my meditation practice. So he gives you a certain type of meditation practice. It's called the loving kindness meditation, and ultimately we are constantly scanning our body for dissonance, and we are focusing all of our loving kindness, as Joe Dispenza says, wherever you put all of your attention, you put your energy. Of course, when we put energy anywhere, so if we put resonance in a place of dissonance, then we can create resonance in a dissonant organ. That's the idea. It's next level stuff. And many people might think, what are you talking about? That's madness. But he has, Pakmurta has had many PhDs, professors, doctors, scientists come to work with him. Originally very doubtful, walked away just gobsmacked.
I'm sure.
So he's a beautiful teacher.
It's where that bridge of science and spirituality meet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because now it's still quite separated.
Yeah, but you must be able to feel the closeness.
Yeah.
It's just it's an uncomfortable closeness because, of course, the medical industrial complex and other huge commercial complexes stand to lose a lot of money as we see this bridging of the gap between spirituality and science.
Don't we know it? I'm always going on and on about that.
Yeah, it's one of my ranting points
Yeah.
as well.
Well, I love the way that you lay it out in your book, because it's funny when you think about death, for example, it is quite a taboo subject, and I've often tried to tell people that I feel this peace when I think about death. And no one really understands that. We've had conversations with my mom around it, because she wants to die in a very specific way, not in a medical setting. She just wants to, when it's her time, don't take her to the hospital, let her die. That's what they did with her mother.
Nice.
And I always thought that's such a beautiful thing, but I love the idea of actually preparing for death, because it's very unusual to think about it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can't take the credit. It was this book, and my way of thinking was inspired in the main from the Tibetan Buddhists. So I was inspired by the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. And these incredible books show us that by shunning and hiding death, as we do in the West, we're shunning more than death, if that were possible, because of course death to many of us is the big scary, the scariest thing, I suppose. It's fair to say, isn't it? Actually, the one thing we fear the most is dying. well, some of us. But what these books taught me and Buddhism taught me was that we must actually flip the script. It was so when Gautama Buddha came. I'm not a Buddhist, by the way. I'm a lay person interested in Buddhism.
An omnist.
Yeah,
I
an
like
omnist.
that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm fascinated by the wisdom of all philosophies and religions. But I have to say, there's some real sense in Buddhism that has really connected to me on a very, very profound level. And so when Gautama Buddha finished his meditation at the Bodhi tree and became the Buddha, became the awakened one, enlightened, the first thing he did was gave a sermon where he talked about the Four Noble Truths. And essentially, I won't go through the whole, they're in the book, and you can Google them. But I'll give you the skinny. Essentially what the Buddha had come to realize was that he said attachment is the root of all suffering. So we create our own suffering through clinging. And I found that a really fascinating idea. And I don't know why it had never occurred to me before.
But I feel like even if it does occur to you, because in principle I know it, but actually practicing it, that's a whole other challenge.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I always say there are three ways of knowing. You can have a faith and a belief in something. You can intellectually know it, and you can have an embodied knowledge of it. And embodied knowledge only really comes through experience or witnessing.
And practice?
And of course, practice. So, and this is my experience with comprehending what the Buddhists call anicca, which is impermanence. So, essentially, as the concept goes, we suffer because we cling to things, because we do not see the impermanence in all things. Yet, intellectually we do, don't we? We know that this book it's got a shelf life, pardon the pun. It's made out of paper. Actually, if it got wet, it would be destroyed very quickly. If it was left out in the sun, it would be destroyed very quickly. These keys will take considerably longer to rust and to fade than, for example, this body. But everything in this realm is subject to the laws of impermanence. Constant change, flux.
This too shall pass.
There you go. Right, exactly. So that's the idea. The idea is that if we know that all things are impermanent, why do we still cling? I always like to use the analogy, if you saw a car driving past and you knew it wasn't going to stop, would you grab hold of the door handle, knowing it would entirely likely tear your arm out of the socket?
We had this conversation yesterday, actually. I was telling her that she had told me last week when we were in Sumba, where we picked up your book, about a family that she was talking to, and one of the children was struggling with a thought or an issue, and his teacher or his psychiatrist told him, thoughts are just like clouds, and you get to hold on to them as long as you want to. They're just going to drift away, and problems are the same. They're just these different clouds that you get to cling on to as long as you want to. And then she actually said the car
from Headspace, sitting
car
on the
analogy.
side of the road. And
I haven't heard that, because I was an early adopter of Headspace, so I understand it's expanded its portfolio now. There are only a few
animations. I use them quite a lot.
Ah, okay, right. It's really gone next level. It's been a long time since I used it, so. Well, okay, but they similar analogy. Yeah, and actually, it's a Far Eastern wisdom, but the same analogy springs to mind when we think about meditation. Be the mountain, let the thoughts be the clouds. The mountain is not going to follow the clouds. The mountain is the mountain.
That's a beautiful one as well. I like that one.
It's quite a nice idea, isn't it? So you just got to watch them. You've got to observe them. Don't attach yourself to the memory or the thoughts or the memories. Observe it. Oh yeah, there's a memory, there's a thought, and then let it go.
But do you think, I think we're quite opposite in that sense, me and her, but do you think, I think I'm a bit too much like my clouds just like drift really quickly.
And you just let it go.
Yeah, but I can't like hold on to anything. Like, no, I can't remember much, or I find it hard to commit to things, like commit to projects, and like, for example, she's so committed to this podcast, where I struggle. I'm always undecisive, you know, and
Did you get dragged here this morning, Carl?
no, I didn't. I really wanted to do this. Actually, let me tell you the truth. I'll have it on camera. I picked up the book first in Sumba, and I was like, wow, this book looks amazing. I started looking through it, and then as things happened, she picked it up, and she said, I love it as well. And she was just more committed to it. She reached it first in the morning.
Yeah.
So she started reading it first. Then when we came to Bali, she purchased it first, so I couldn't purchase another one, you know?
We had to go to several bookshops to find it. Yeah.
It's sold out, so that's, I mean, it's a good thing, but I'm sorry for your inconvenience at the same time.
It was part of the, I feel like part of it was intentionally seeking it and putting that energy and that thought into finding it.
That's
very
what I'm
humbled.
missing. Yeah.
I'm very, very humbled.
Have you ever heard, like, do you understand that, what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to commit to things, but also, I never really have a lot of issues that I struggle with, or like problems that I attach myself with. They kind of just drift away very quickly. Yeah. But I would like to be a little bit more centered. Yeah. Were you like that? Because I remember Lucie told me, she read your book, she said you had all sorts of issues before when you were younger.
With addiction.
Which I have struggled with a lot. And was that the kind of headspace you were in before with your... Yeah.
It's very common for anyone who's struggled with addiction to, well, actually, struggle with distraction.
Oh yeah, that hits the nail on the head.
You don't have an addiction problem, you have a distraction problem. I was an addict for 20 years, alcoholic and cocaine addict, and also a sex addict, which sounds glamorous, but it really isn't, actually. And it causes an awful lot of problems, as you might imagine. And the work for me was, so in February I'll be 6 years sober, and I've never, since I started to do this work, it's never crossed my mind again to use cocaine or to drink alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, it's never, not even throughout additional, we'll say, trauma, but with little t's, because I haven't had a particularly traumatic life since I changed my path. But I've had a blessed life since I changed my path.
And is that mainly due to meditation? You can clip that. Clip it on you.
Can hear you?
Yeah, you can hear. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Meditation, but also I would say actually I credit plant medicine for the deep work.
Oh yes.
So
ayahuasca more specifically?
Ayahuasca specifically, backed up by the flesh of God, the psilocybin mushrooms. I have done an intense volume of work with both medicines. I actually co-facilitate ayahuasca ceremonies now.
Here?
No, it's not here because it's not legal here, but elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. Another island, another dimension.
Exactly, another time and another place.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And actually, I'm pivoting at the moment. So I'm retraining as a counsellor and as a psychedelic integration coach, because I see such incredible life-changing value in working with these medicines. So for me, and I think I might talk about this in the book, but the medicines like ayahuasca, they switch off something called the default mode network in the brain, which is in part that busy, distracting part that you have. It's also all facets of ego essentially just become switched off. Almost, you can sort of see the tendrils of the medicine sort of pushing the waves of ego apart so that she can reach into the subconscious, unconscious. And it's there where the medicine does this work to find repressed, suppressed, completely forgotten memories, traumatic with little t's and big T's. Because what we don't realise is that we live in a traumatised society where trauma has become normalised, and where trying to fit in to that society has also been normalised. And there's a great deal of pressure on us to do so, despite rising depression, rising mental illness, rising suicide rates. We're just being told we've just got to keep forcing ourselves into this bullshit system that isn't fit for purpose, and it's certainly not what we were put on the planet to do.
No.
If that makes any sense.
Oh my God, I resonate with that so much. I struggle with that every single day. It is bullshit.
Yeah, and you're a square peg trying to fit yourself in a round hole because, you know, your parents told you should, and their parents told them they should, and their parents told them they should, and of course everybody else's parents were around the parents telling them. Society is trying to push us into this mould to essentially continue to become revenue-producing units for a larger system, aka the Matrix.
Yeah.
You talked about the vampire.
Have you heard of Duncan Trussell?
No.
He's a comic comedian. He's on the Joe Rogan podcast quite a lot. He's one of Joe Rogan's best friends, and he always uses the analogy of vampires when he explains these situations.
About right.
And it's amazing, and I laughed, but it was so true. He said, when you get a job, it's basically you're going to a vampire and making a deal, and the vampire is saying, I'm going to suck some of your blood every day so I can keep some of it for me when I need it.
Yep.
And then if you do really well, when I decide you've given me enough blood, then I might tell you, you can keep a little bit more now. You know?
Of your own blood.
Yeah, of your own blood, yeah. And once you've finished all your blood, you have no more blood to give me, then I'm going to find somebody else to, replace you and give me more blood. And it's right. So true, and it shocks me. And
of course, I'll kick up the blood. I'll kick some of my percentage of the blood up to another part of the hierarchy, and another part of the hierarchy, and so on and so forth. So this entire system is actually sucking. I mean, it's energetic vampirism. That's what I like to call it. Ultimately, if you think about money as stored energy, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
We put our energy into whatever we're doing for a job. Then the money is the stored energy. Then it is exactly vampirism. We have an incredibly perverse system that drains us of our life force energy.
And what is really interesting that he always says is vampires do not just approach you, you actually invite them in.
You give them permission.
You give them permission. That's the most interesting part for me, is that it's you that does this, that you've been tricked somehow. You've been manipulated in your subconscious.
So they call it glamoring, I think, in... was it Buffy the Vampire Slayer? No, there was another, True Blood it was called, and I think the vampire could glamour you. A lot of comparisons. I mean, there are some people that believe that we do actually have a higher echelon of vampires running the world, but probably not for this podcast.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And lizard people.
and lizard people.
Yeah.
Well, but the good news is, of course, we can do something about all of this, and I think that's back to your point of distraction.
No, it's okay. I'll use just clip it. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
We're going to edit all this anyway.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, I think we can just... Yeah, you're good.
Oh, good. We ultimately have choice and free will. And despite programming everywhere telling us otherwise, we can always exercise our sovereignty. There's a chapter in this book called A Side Note About Sovereignty. I don't go into it too much, but it's just a gentle reminder to people that if you really want to find and sustain genuine happiness, then we need to have conversations like this. We need to understand these micro facets. People might say, what the hell's sovereignty got to do with happiness? Well, everything. Freedom has an awful lot to do with happiness as it transpires. And our executing free will does too. But then we have to sort of expand and contract in our own communities to see what our reach is, don't we? And ultimately, for example, can I do anything about what's happening in in the Gaza Strip right now? Actually, no. We did actually wonder, we did look to see if we could go to Palestine and work and do some volunteer work for an aid agency just to help. But we can't even do that because they're not allowing them in. So does it do for me to put a huge percentage of my attention and energy on that situation where I can't help? No. Could I meditate on it and send love and light and kindness and positive energy to that place? Yes, of course I can. So I can dedicate some of my meditation to it. That was quite an extreme but real-time example of how there are so many things going on in the world that we cannot affect. All we can ultimately, what we should be doing first and foremost is starting here. Rumi said, maybe you are focusing on the, he didn't say focusing, he said, maybe you are searching on the branches for what may only be found in the roots. And this was my realization. So I was grossly distracted, constantly in search of something. I didn't know what it was. But of course, I was embracing change, but it wasn't a positive embracing of change, because actually I was, as it transpires, I was running away from something. Yeah. And when I actually push came to shove, I realized I was running away from me, which is actually impossible if you think about it, because you're always attached to the same legs. So I discovered Rumi's work. It was also the same time I started reading Joseph Campbell, and he said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Yeah. And that was, I like that because it was a gauntlet down, wasn't it? You know, Rumi said it in a real sort of smooth and take it or leave it sort of way, whereas Campbell clearly says, you're fearful of doing the inner work. And I took the challenge. So I stopped seeking distraction out there. The ayahuasca, the meditation, the yoga, the sound healing, all the other modalities that I started to play with, the philosophizing, actually, you know, talking about these things, they all helped me work out my trauma. And I had a lot of trauma. My mum was an alcoholic, and as much as, and I have a lot of love for her. She's dead now. She died in 2014. But
your story about the passing of your mum is beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
that's in the book. Yeah,
I love that. I love that you guys actually spent time with her body after she died, and I love the comparison you draw between our modern way of making the dead look like they're still alive and creating this illusion. And
isn't it strange?
It is so strange.
Yeah.
We have a perverse relationship with death.
Yeah.
And well, I suppose one of the reasons why we treat it so, and why we treat old folks so as well, and why we treat the dying in such a way, is because they're a constant reminder of what's around the corner for us. And of course, we don't want to know that that's around the corner. And in the West anyway, we spend a great deal of time pushing it away, which is insane. And ultimately does us no favor, because, and this is back to really why the book and the Tibetan book of living and dying and so on and so forth. I came to learn that actually the secret to dying well is in the life well lived. So I must embrace the fact that I am impermanent. I must embrace the fact that my loved ones are impermanent. And then I've got to take stock of relationships, relationship with self, relationship with others. If I'm going to write a brutally honest list about my relationship with me now, what does that look like? You know, and obviously I'll invite the people watching and listening to this right now, do it. You don't have to share it. In fact, if sharing it means you won't be honest, then definitely don't share it. But the fundamental point is be honest. Write all of those things down, all of the things that I don't like about myself, or perhaps shame and regret, perhaps the things that I want to change. The things that I would change if I had time, all of these excuses that we give ourselves. And then the same thing for our relationships. And then that actually becomes the work. That list, and it's a really simple list to compile. The challenge in my book is if you had 5 minutes left to live, what would be on your list of regrets?
We both did it.
How was that?
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It hurts so much, yeah. And I realized that coming back to what you were saying before, we always try. When I was raised, my dad works for the United Nations, and I was always so proud of him that he would be helping so many people in so many ways. So I always felt like a need to also contribute to helping people. But I'm not sure who told me. It might also be Duncan Trussell, one of his podcasts. He said, don't try to help people on the other side of the world. Don't send $1 to the African kid in the other side of the world. He's like, if everybody helped the people in their home, if everybody helped the people around them, it would slowly start to reach everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And so if I focus my attention on my friends, which I never did, I always treated my friends as like they're always going to be there. They don't have anyone better to hang out with or whatever. So it was just, my mentality was all screwed up. And when I realized that, I was like, wow, I'm really not a good friend. I'm not a good son. I'm not a good brother. And then that is just like so much work to do.
Yeah.
And
beautiful work.
Beautiful work, but
Painful
and tough.
Yeah, but real work.
Real work. Yeah.
Not like those job things we were talking about earlier on. Actually,
Yes,
I absolutely love what you said there, and this is where you start thinking about sound and frequency, or I do anyway, and how we are all frequency. We're a collection of frequencies, and we're all therefore connected through this resonance. Ramdas said, all I can do to help you is work on myself, and all you can do to help me is work on yourself. But if we all did that, the ripple effect through our community would be exponential.
Yeah.
In fact, it would come back to you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the law of attraction, aren't we? Curiously. Yeah. So that's really what I was talking about in terms of the macro versus the micro. How can we make a difference? First and foremost, do the work on ourselves. Secondly, do the work with the people around us. And this is, because we don't do this, do we?
No.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do shadow work.
Yeah.
It sucks. I like to say that shadow work's like, it's like skipping shadow work's like skipping leg day at the gym. Nobody wants to do it. But of course, when we do skip leg day at the gym, then we end up with a very top-heavy arrangement and shaky foundations. And the point and purpose is so I talk about shadow work quite a lot in this book, I think, deliberately so. Shadow work, for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, is from the Jungian concept of shadow self. So we sit with our shadow, we sit with our darkest parts, and we don't attempt to suppress them or to judge it. We don't attempt to get entangled in observing these memories. We just observe them for what they are, the truth of what they are, as best we can observe the truth of what they are. Because, of course, our truth is only derived from our perspective. And I think it's safe to say that in many situations, especially with other people, our own perspective is just one version of events. You've heard the idea that there are three sides to every story: your side, her side, and the truth.
All right. Of course. Yeah.
This is actually something that the ayahuasca does very well. It'll take you back to places and events. Have you worked with ayahuasca before?
No ayahuasca.
I just want to say this. Yesterday we were talking about ayahuasca, and she was saying we got to go and do it, and we got to find a place to go and do it. And I said it will just come to us one day, and now we're here.
Yeah, and I co-facilitate ceremonies.
The world is really.
There you go. It's come to you. We'll have that conversation off camera.
Yeah. Well, it's actually really funny. Just another side note, because this morning I was sitting on the toilet and I opened the email about what's happening in Gaza, and I've been trying not to look at it because it's just been really heavy. And I was reading this email, and it just closed, by itself, and then another email opened up about this spiritual training for shamanism, and I'm like, if this is not a message, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think the universe is giving you some fairly strong
It's
messages
strong
there.
message. But just to come back to the plant medicines, because I use mushrooms quite a bit,
Yeah.
but I like to do it in a very intentional space by myself.
Yeah, same.
That, you know, spiritually, I feel like I get the healing that I need. But when you explore it, you kind of just, you say you do it in a fun, there's like a very big difference in the way that we experience.
Recreational use.
Yeah, I just float around and do whatever I get attracted to or distracted by, I guess.
Yeah.
But you've tried with the blindfold, and you said you just can't.
I think I haven't tried hard enough to, yeah.
What kind of dose do you do?
Everything. I've done macros and micros and
5 grams plus?
yeah, I've done,
Yeah.
I've never done 5 grams plus.
Terence McKenna said anything under 5 grams is tourism. FYI.
I'm just scared that I wouldn't know how to come back from that. But I guess
You do.
that's where the guidance comes in.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I mean, I frequently work with between 5 and 10 grams.
And do you lock yourself up in a room,
Yeah.
basically?
Yeah, I get naked. I get in a space that I know is a safe space, that I know will not be interrupted, which is the 3 golden rules of working with any of these things are set, setting, and guide. Mindset. Am I in the right place to do this? Do I have the right intention? I'm not going to do it for recreational purposes. I'm going to do it for a deep dive. Okay, so I'm setting that intention. Setting, where am I? Am I in a safe space? Has it been cleansed, saged? Am I in a circle with other people? With whom am I sitting then? You know, what's their vibe? What's their energy like? What's their story? Do I know anything about these people? And the guide. So who is it a shaman or is it a good facilitator with the tend not to work with shamans with psilocybin unless you're in Mexico and South America. And once you get those 3 things right, you're in that space to have an altogether alternative experience, in my opinion, in my experience. So I will usually do it in my bedroom. I get naked, I'll have the AC on. I've got everything I need around me, so I know I don't need to move for 6 hours. I've got the water, I use hape, which is a South American kind of a snuff. You heard of this? It's what we use when we sit in the ayahuasca ceremony. It's usually served with a bone.
Right, yeah.
Up your nose. And that is an incredible medicine to use with psilocybin as well as ayahuasca. I call it the medicine for the medicine. Because it'll help you, if you're feeling too heavy with the medicine, it'll take you up a plane. If you are sleepy, it'll wake you up. If you get stuck in a loop, have you ever been stuck in a psychedelic loop before? Yeah, I mean, I've been in one of those for 8 hours. You don't want to do that. So the rapé will do that for you. And then I have a playlist, specific music. So I use isochronics and binaurals. I also use Sanskrit chants. This is the Guru Rinpoche mantra. Oma Hung Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Hung. That's a portal. It's the best way to explain. How can I explain a chant? A one-dimensional written chant as a portal. That's what they are. And so when you work with these medicines and you listen to certain chants, those chants will open certain spaces for you to visit. Yeah, and so
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done it like
dive.
that. So, yeah, on the list of things to do then.
5 grams plus dried as well. So you've got to dry. If you want to get the right weight, they've got to be dried.
Right.
Because of course, when they're freshly picked, they're very water filled. So, and then just make sure you're doing it with the right people. But I wouldn't recommend this to people who aren't seasoned psychonauts. But I did a 10-gram golden teacher dive not too long ago. Golden teachers are they're teachers.
Yeah.
They're very profound plants. But I had a very clear intention, which I achieved, which was to actually, funnily enough, working on this How to Die Happy book, actually towards the end, at the point of publishing, I became very unhappy.
Really?
I forgot everything in the book. I became attached to the outcome. I became attached to the idea of an Amazon bestseller. and I was super stressed, like really stressed, to the point where I'd lost all my practice. I was just working day and night. I was working until 3 in the morning, and I was putting out podcasts and doing other stuff. And actually my partner Jules, to whom this book is dedicated, she's my mindfulness North Star, and she just said, "Have you read your book?" And I said, "Okay, great point." So within 4 weeks of having that realization that I'd lost my track, because I'm no guru, I'm just a man on the mend, you know. Ultimately, I'm a human having a human experience, and part of this book and part of my message is to say, you're not supposed, you don't have to be this, you know, Zen meditating monk in the mountains for 20 years. We don't have to do that. And there's no pressure on us to be that way. There are so many ways for us to be mindful and present and aware and grateful without a spiritualized identity. And get ready to rise and fall, because mindfulness is impermanent, just as everything else is. Happiness is too, right? But I took myself on a journey. I did a 10-gram golden teacher journey where I wanted to totally dissolve, and I did. I dissolved entirely back into the frequency of love. For anyone who doesn't work with psychedelics, they'll be listening to this thinking, what the fuck is this guy talking about? What can I tell you? And when I bathed in the frequency of love for long enough, I rose out of it again, completely cleansed. So I'd removed all of that shell, all of the scales. Actually, that might be a better way to put it. And I was back, and then I went to the jungle again, did a week-long silent meditation with my teacher, and then I did an ayahuasca ceremony the week after that, and then I was very much back in the room. I can't remember why I started.
When was this?
March.
Oh wow.
I totally understand the frequency of love, and I always feel like for me it's a reset, and I tend to really have very intense experience with purging, and I cry a lot. I'm a mess. I fall apart and then I'm rebuilt, and somehow my intentions always play out the way that I need them to, even if it's in a way that's not necessarily expected. But a dose over 5, I think I would need guidance, because I would be a bit too scared of.
But find a guide and get someone to sit with you, and you because that's where you do the really, really deep work. It really is. It's where you're doing things on a whole other level. I'm not suggesting to your listeners that everyone should go out and start taking massive doses of mushrooms, especially if they haven't worked with these medicines. You got to do this. Huge caveat is responsible use, and
respectful.
Respect. You got to respect the medicines, because if you don't, they will give you a cosmic kick.
Yeah, in the butt.
Right.
But I really love the fact that you say you're not a guru, and I think that's why I resonate with your book so much, because I tend to not like the idea of blind faith and people who kind of blur the lines between religion and spirituality. And that's something that you speak about so eloquently. I'd really love to hear a little bit more about the difference between spirituality and religion.
Oh, that's a big question. I suppose for me, spirituality needs no religion. Some people think we're a body with a spirit. I think we're a spirit with a body. So I refer to the human body in this book as an earth rover from day one. And I refer to me, or my me-ness, if you like, as consciousness. Some people would call it a soul, I suppose. So I am, regardless of religion. You are, regardless of religion. You are, and everyone else here is. But there are, of course, many of us on this planet, in this plane, doing this work at the moment, who are completely unaware of their isness.
I get what you mean.
You follow me?
Yeah.
So they don't actually see their isness. They see the illusion of identity. I am a white, middle-class, 47-year-old Englishman. I'm a writer. I'm a podcaster. I'm a lover, a brother, a son, a fiance. All of these facets of identity. These are all of the things that we believe make us. But in reality, they are not us. It's just a story. So this is the Martin story. And there's something inside that story, or above it, if you like, whichever hierarchical perspective works for you. And that's my isness. And my isness is spirit.
That is a very freeing perspective to look at yourself that way, yeah. Because I'm always like, I'm a white, privileged guy that's had, great parents, that's given me everything I needed. And I've kind of felt a responsibility because of that, that I can't be depressed, or I can't struggle with the same issues that other people struggle with. So that's really interesting for me. Yeah, it's a real eye-opener. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad that perspective works. I don't know where I grasped this idea, so I'm not sure if I can call it an original idea, but we are born into a skin colour, into a gender, into a neighbourhood, into a religion, many of us, or a non-religion. That's the thing as well, right? We're not religious. We are a not religious family. Into a country, into a continent, onto a planet. And then we spend the rest of our lives fighting for those things. But we didn't choose any of them.
Yeah.
Isn't it a bizarre thing?
It is.
Well, we did choose it. I suppose you could say on a soul level we did choose it, because I would say that your soul chose this life for a series of lessons, but that's a whole other conversation.
Your whole idea, and please interrupt me if I got it wrong, your whole idea of the fact that we are consciousness having a human experience, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the idea that it's sort of, we have the ability to play a game within the game, because you mentioned that the whole point of the game is remembering ourselves and coming back to this unity. And I just think that's such a beautiful way to think about it. And it helps me a lot when I think of the things that I do get attached to that work me up, like the war or my president or, things like that. I think that it's just it gives you that distance, basically, that distance of non-attachment, but at the same time just letting things play out, not getting so caught up in the injustice, unfairness.
The drama. Yeah, there's a beautiful book called The Ascension Papers, written by a chap called Zingdad. He's a South African. And he's actually called Arn, but his dog's called Zing, and he's Zing's dad, so his nom de plume is Zingdad. And he is able to channel his higher self and a couple of his spirit guides. And he's incredibly wittily written down the conversation between him and his higher self and a spirit guide in a book. And what's one of the many charming things about it is you can hear the different voices. But Arn, the human, starts to question his higher self about the meaning of all things. And he gets a load of answers. And I thoroughly recommend you read it. I'm not sure if it was ever available on Amazon. There's a free version on his website. It's called The Ascension Papers. But one of the things that they discuss in that book, which resonated very deeply with me, was this idea of the complexity of the system in which we live. Now, I'm not talking about the economic matrix nonsense. That's just an illusion. I mean the universe. I mean planet Earth. Life on Earth. It's what the Buddhists call samsara, isn't it? The cycle of birth, suffering, death, and rebirth, aka the game of life. That's why I refer to us as samsaric citizens. Now, I've come to this realization through my own journey, but the Ascension Papers also discusses this, that it's a construct. And it's a construct for us to have these experiences, ultimately for us to beam down to Earth, to reincarnate, whatever you want to spawn, or if you're a gamer, respawn, you know, whatever you want to call it, to keep plugging back into the game, to learn about ourselves, to learn about all of our multiple facets. If you think about it, no one life journey is the same, is it? So there is so much learning to be had. So the idea is that, we are from a unity consciousness, but we currently live here in a realm of separation. And the game is to learn to love in a realm of separation.
So how does that work in your mind? Let's use an example of when you're face to face with someone that is, I don't want to use the word evil, but somebody who does bad things, somebody who hurts other people. What happens in your mind?
Well, in reality, two things happen. My very human side wants justice and wants to protect and defend and annihilate. If a person or a force is mindlessly hurting other people, then of course all my human facets come out, and I want to do everything I can to defend, even if that involves destruction. But on a higher spiritual level, the concept essentially is that we're just playing out a game. We're playing out roles. And even in the most heinous situations with which we are presented, and we do present ourselves with some of the most heinous things possible, don't we? I mean, we are creator beings, and of course we can create such positive things, and we can also create such abhorrent sights and scenes and do such terrible things to one another. But the idea is that we can try to transcend that, seeing it for the illusion that it is, seeing it as a lesson. One of the tricks, and I'm fully appreciate that will trigger so many people, what I've just said. It usually does, because of course I'm talking, and I'm training as a counsellor, and I work with victims of trauma all the time. So please understand that I'm not looking through rose-tinted spectacles here. I was a victim of trauma many times over. But I've got a new way of viewing this now, which has truly helped me understand how to die happy. And then I wrote a book. So, and that is to, instead of seeing things like they're happening to me, try to replace 2 with 4.
Yeah.
It's happening for me. So it's not happening to me, it's an event that's happening. I was in the way. What lessons can I glean from that?
Yeah.
And this is where the concept of karma comes into play, because the idea of karma really is about cause and effect. So an evil person does something bad to someone else. There's the cause, and what will be the effect of that? Of course, there will be trauma, so there'll be an embodiment of that thing, whatever it was, and there will be a need to heal. But then, what is that person going to do? What are they going to do with the baton? Are they going to pass on the shitty baton, the shitty stick? Because this is what we do, isn't it?
Yeah.
You traumatise me. That's my partner Jules over there. Hey, babe. Yeah, we're doing a podcast, but they said they would edit it, so.
No
is it okay? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
No problem. Yeah. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Jules,
Carl.
Carl, and Lucy. It's all right. I was mid-flow. Well, shall I shout you when we're finished?
Yeah,
But I've got a meeting at Mana at 10:30, so I'll see how we go. All right, darling.
Cheers. Cheers.
That shirt looks lovely, by the way. New shirt. Bought it yesterday.
Ah, okay. I thought you were just that charming every day.
Just being charming. No, it's relevant now. Where was I? Oh yeah. Yeah.
about us and them.
So you traumatize me, I traumatize you. Do I use exactly the same practice? Maybe not. I mean, in cases of, in extreme cases like paedophilia, we do, don't we? So if I'm a victim of paedophilia, it's not uncommon for me to then do exactly the same thing. But in more common cases, such as an assault, perhaps you assaulted me and I'm holding on to all of that pent-up anger and that aggression. Well, if you're around me, you're catching bits of that. If I'm doing what most of us do, I'm suppressing it, well, it's a pressure cooker, isn't it? And ultimately, you cannot suppress energy. You can't do it. It's constantly in motion. So it's seeping out. Whenever it seeps out, you get burnt. And this is what we do. And this is cause and this is cause and effect. And so the teaching is to do the unthinkable, to be a victim of some of the most heinous things possible, and to forgive it, and to do that work, whatever work is required to forgive it, healthily, so that I don't pass it on to you, or I don't pass it on to my children. This is really the idea of breaking the cycle. Now, Jesus talks about this all the time.
Right.
You know, we're talking about omnism and great teachings. That guy had it nailed. He was talking about forgiveness and transcending the wrongdoings of others thousands of years ago. And I mean, I'm a lapsed Catholic, or a recovered Catholic, I prefer to say. And I never saw the wisdom in those teachings because I didn't want to be wrapped up in all the dogma and the doctrine, and I don't understand how God is love, but God will also set fire to my house if I do something wrong. God will judge me. It didn't make any sense to me. It was a perversity. This idea that a religion can be based on love, but can also have so much judgment and so much hatred and so much, vitriol for anyone who doesn't align with its ideas.
That's very human, isn't it?
Well, so we come full circle to your question about spirituality and religion. I can't get on board with an organization that seeks to control and that seeks to force people to believe its vibe, whatever its vibe is.
Right.
Unless, more's the pity, if all religions said, what's at the very base of our religion? You know, remember when it was started? What is at the very base? Funny, I was having a conversation with my higher self during a psilocybin journey about what is the word of God? And the voice told me the word of God is the frequency of love, unfettered. And I said, unfettered by what? And he said, unfettered by ego, unfettered by humanity. So if we were to part that dense layer cake of collective religious ego, what's at the base of all of these religions? It is actually love.
Right.
But they've got so lost and they've forgotten this beautiful, actually very simple message. And the more laws and rules they created, the more complex and confusing and hypocritical, in my view, and I say this with all the respect, because this is just not, it's just not for me. That's probably the best way to put it.
I resonate with that so much.
I resonate with that a lot, yeah. And it also just made me think about other things that I never understood as well. So I always saw the animal world as so brutal. You know, when you see these videos of, baby pigs or whatever getting massacred by a lion.
Yeah, Joe Rogan shares a lot of brutal content, doesn't he?
Yeah, I've seen plenty. But
animals killing each other.
That just made me think that, because at the end, when they're dying, these animals, you see this moment of peace, of surrender.
Yeah.
And I never understood what that was, but now I kind of think that's love in a way. I know you need me, and this is life, and
Yeah.
it's all this circle of,
Yeah.
it is what it is. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
And that frequency will just continue on because it's energy.
Right.
Emotion, energy in motion.
We have a lot of, in our country in Seychelles, a lot of Catholics, a lot of Christians, and it's really ingrained in the culture and in the society. And Lucie and I struggle with it a lot. For example, like everybody's on Facebook there. Facebook is this massive power. Society communicates through it every day. And so every day there's a notice or a post about, for example, the other day somebody saved somebody else's life in the water. And there was like 250 comments. God is great.
Thanking Jesus.
Yeah, thank you, God.
It wasn't
God,
even there.
God is all loving. But then literally a few hours later, you see a car hit a 4-year-old girl and she died.
Yeah, well,
hit
God
by
was
a
there
drunk
too.
driver. And there's nothing about God.
No, interesting. Well, see, this is where the problem with personifying God
Right.
comes in my mind. If you ask me, do I believe in God? Yeah, but not the God that many other people are envisaging. This is where this blend of Eastern philosophy comes into play, because there's a concept of Taoism. You know Taoism,
Yes.
which I talk about in the book. Now, there's a book called the Tao Te Ching. It's like, I think it was 5,000 words. No, more than that, way more than that. And essentially, or is it 5,000 words? I can't remember. But the point is, it's a lot of words, and the whole book is basically saying you can't quantify what the Tao is, nor can I, even in this book that I've dedicated to quantifying what the Tao is. But what we can suppose is that the Tao is also the frequency of love, energy, God. It's just that we've got a different shape and size for God depending on who we are and what lens we're looking through. So when people think about a good or a bad experience and they say God intervened, respectfully, I don't believe that God intervened at all. I believe that love was there. And love's there, by the way, regardless of whether or not this thing goes down well or badly. Love is always there because we are all at our very core love. We are at our very core happiness. We are happy. It's just that our conditioning and our experience and all of the madness that we put ourselves through on a daily basis puts us in situations where we move from our default, which is love, which is happy. So in a way, I can respect their truth when they say God is love. But if they're suggesting for a moment that an omnipotent white-haired dude sort of reached down and saved somebody from the water, well, I don't see that truth. I see that love was in the person who went to rescue the kid. But ultimately, chance was also there, because they might have been another 100 yards away and not been able to get there in time to save the kid.
Yeah.
And that's why the child is going to get hit by the car.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, the idea of God, having like nipples and a hairy chest, never made sense to me.
Dispensing lightning justice from his fingertips as well. This it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Well, unless you view that whole conceptualization as an incredible tool for control.
Yes.
The Seychelles are mainly Catholic because missionaries went out to the islands and stuffed all these ideas down the throats of the locals.
Oh, built these amazing churches. Yeah.
Right. And I can't help but sound a little bit irritated with the Catholic Church now, but I've been to Peru, and I've done some very magical things in that place. Worked with the shamans, worked with the queros, and heard the ancient stories of how the so-called conquistadors raped and pillaged that land, destroyed all of the incredible technologies that were being used, and forced all of those people into slavery under Catholicism. And I just can't get right with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Surely if a religion is just an incredible religion, then I should just want to be in. You don't need to force me.
Right.
You don't need to advertise.
And there's
to me.
nothing you can do to be expelled, right? Because we're all human. We all
Right.
make mistakes.
And I find that it also really cuts you off from introspection.
Absolutely. You are giving all of your sovereign power away to a saviour, or a series of saviours, depending if you're worshipping the priest and the cardinals and the monsignors and ultimately the Pope, and then Jesus and God. So this idea that we are not our own saviour is, I believe, a very dangerous idea for us, and it's very limiting for our growth, because ultimately we are outsourcing our spiritual responsibility
Exactly.
to somebody else, apart from if we follow 10 rules and do what the priest tells us to do and yada yada.
And we're also scared of just accepting the fact that we can't define it. It's not something that we can define in this human vessel.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Actually accept that.
Mystery is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, if there's one lesson or one thing that you want people to take from your book, what would that be?
Oh. Well, I'll answer that with two, but because it's a two-part answer. The theme to this book, if you sliced it down the middle and checked out its arteries and looked at every chapter and maybe even paragraphs in isolation, you would see that choose change is at the heart of the book. It's all about choosing change, understanding the myriad wonders of impermanence and change. But I suppose the real message I've got for everyone is learn to love.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it starts here.
Yeah.
It's not there. So the challenge to learn to love is actually a really big one.
It's huge. I was going to ask you, that was my next question.
That's why there are 52 chapters.
If you had to give somebody a piece of advice as to where do you even start that? How do you start that?
Well, setting aside a shameless plug, buy this book, it's all in there. I do have in this book, I've created this process, which I happened upon. I use air quotes because I don't take myself too seriously with any of this stuff, you know. So I've created this process which I call the anatomy of happy. And at the top of the anatomy of happy is what I call the Zen Then. And if I briefly explain the anatomy of happy, it's not a linear process, because healing is not linear. As I explained earlier on, I'm a man on the mend. I'll get all the way to having done this profound work, almost blowing my own brains out in 2015, alcoholic, narcissist, addict, royal fuck up, to 2023 publishing a book called How to Die Happy. But then I go back, because I then I trip and I get back into my humanness. So it's not a linear journey, so it's a spiral hill, that's the idea. And the spiral hill has all these little snakes and ladders tracks up and down it. So you can get all the way up to a stage and then you fall 2 stages down. That's okay, because you don't have to go all the way through that whole process of learning again. You can just take the shortcut to get back to where you were at. And the anatomy of happy is 5 stages: self-realization, unlearning, forgiveness, self-love, and connection. What I'm suggesting is, if we do all of those things, then we've done a lump of work that means that we can sit atop that hill, that proverbial hill, and then the real work begins inside what I call the Zen Ven, which is a Ven of 4 concentric circles: awareness, acceptance, gratitude, and presence. And if we can take a look at every day, and then every hour, and then every half hour, quarter of an hour, every minute, and ask ourselves, am I aware, am I present, am I grateful, and am I accepting, then we're doing the work. Now you can get to the stage where you're in the Zen Ven every minute of every day. I'm fairly sure you'll just ascend. You'll probably just pop into a rainbow and disappear. Good luck. Send me an email, or because I'd like to know what that's like. But if we're doing anything like that, even if we're doing it just twice a day, that's a massive improvement. So how do we do it? Well, the basics. Well, the basic thing first and foremost is breath.
Yeah.
Breath is our vehicle to oneness. And as Eckhart Tolle once said, one conscious breath in and out is a meditation. What just happened then?
Moment of connection, a moment of...
Nothing.
Presence.
Oh, nothing as well.
Nothing. Presence, but nothing.
Yeah.
So in that one conscious breath, we are able to completely clear out all the clutter. People say they can't meditate. Okay, start with one breath. I feel your pain. I've been there. First time I ever tried to meditate, I can't remember what age I was. I was in my 30s and I sat in a bath with all the intentions and the candles and the music, and I was sitting in that bath for about 2 hours trying to meditate. I got so angry.
Yeah, I know the struggle.
The irony of getting angry with yourself that you can't meditate, because actually meditating really is just trying to find nothing. It's just trying to find a place of nothingness. So of course you can't do it for an hour immediately, half an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Let's start with a breath. One conscious breath. Because in that breath, when you just focus on that breath, you're meditating. So I think that's one of my superpowers for people. And then of course gratitude.
I love that. Well, I mean, I really am grateful that you've taken the time to do this
So
with
grateful,
us.
yeah.
And I think to
Thanks for
honor
having
the
me.
whole book and you, we should end with a conscious breath. Hopefully.
Aha! Okay, let's do it. Okay. In through the nose. Let's do 3 actually.
All right, perfect.
3 sighs. Now, how's that for a bit of self-regulation?
Amazing.
Love it.